You see these movies in the West and you think you know the Soviet Union. You think it was all screaming, big parades, secret police dragging people from beds at 3 am, loud ideology, loud fear, high drama. Let me tell you something from the inside. It wasn't loud, it was quiet. It was the most quiet place on earth. And that silence, that is where the real lie hides. I grew up in the ruins of that silence. I saw what it does to a person's soul. And now, living abroad for about 2 years, I see the same patterns starting in places you wouldn't expect. I see you falling for the same traps we fell for, just with better lighting. Sit down. Let's talk about how it really was. Not the history books, but the feeling in the bones. The biggest lie about Soviet life, and the one that is the hardest to explain to Americans or Europeans, is that it was about the system. It wasn't. You imagine a giant machine crushing people, but a machine is visible, you can see it, you can fight it. Real life was about learning how to never collide with the system in the first place. It was like living in a house where the ceiling is just a few inches above your head. You don't notice it until you try to stand up straight, so you learn to walk hunched over. Eventually, your spine grows that way. You forget you even crouching. You think this is just how humans walk. When I was a small boy, back when I still lived in Russia, I remember my father. He was a good man, very smart, could fix anything with a piece of wire and a heavy tool, but at home he was one person, and outside he was a shadow. I remember asking him why he never spoke up when his boss at the factory said something obviously stupid. My father looked at me. I'll never forget this look. It wasn't anger or even fear, he was just tired. He told me, in this country, the person who is invisible is the person who survives. If they don't see you, they can't hurt you. That's the part you never understand. You don't fight the rain, you just buy an umbrella, keep your head down and wait for it to stop, even if it rains for 70 years. We didn't wake up thinking, I must obey the party. We woke up thinking, I hope nothing goes wrong today. And that mindset, it shapes everything. It creates a Russian way of existing. We learn to flatten ourselves, not because we were weak, but because in our world, visibility was dangerous. If you were too good at your job, the system gave you more work for the same miserable pay. If you were too loud with your opinion, you became a problem. And a problem meant your children didn't get into the good school, or your family got moved to a worse apartment. The system didn't need you to love it. It didn't care about your heart. It just needed you to not be a friction. We became like stones in a river. We let the water flow over us, and we stayed exactly where we were, cold and heavy. And then there is the lying. This is my favorite part to explain because Westerners get so upset about fake news now. Listen to me. We lived in fake news for generations. It was our oxygen. But here is the trick. Nobody believed it. Not the people reading the newspaper, not the person writing the newspaper, and certainly not the government official who ordered it to be written. Everyone knew it was a lie. We knew they were lying. They knew we knew they were lying. We knew they knew we knew. And yet, we all kept a straight face. We called it doublethink. But it was more like double life. I remember school. We had political information every Friday. We had to stand up in our red neckties and talk about how the West is collapsing and how our harvest is the best in the history. We looked at the teacher, she looked at us. We both knew the shops were empty. We both knew my mother spent 4 hours that morning waiting for some grey meat that smelled like wet dog. But we said the words. Why? Because truth had no practical function. In your world, you think truth is a weapon. In our world, truth was a liability. If you spoke the truth, nothing improved. The meat didn't get better, the shops didn't fill up, you just got in trouble. So you learn that words are just sounds, they don't mean anything. This does something to your brain. It's like a split. You have your official face and your real face. After 20, 30 years, you forget which one you started with. This is why Russians are so cynical. You tell us, I want to help the world. And we think, okay, what is his real angle? What is he hiding? We don't believe in beautiful words. Beautiful words are what the party used when they wanted to take your tractor or send your uncle to a camp. To us, someone who talks about ideals is either a liar or a fool, and we don't like either. It made us very sharp, in a dark way. We learned to read between lines. If the newspaper said there is no reason to panic about bread supply, we didn't think, oh good. We immediately ran to the store to buy all the flour and salt we could find, because we knew if they say there is no reason to panic, it means the panic has already started and they're losing control. People ask me, if everything was so fake, how did you live? How did you eat? We lived through something called blood. This is Russian word you don't really have an equivalent for. It's not networking, like you do on LinkedIn. No, it was a survival web. You couldn't buy a good pair of boots in a store. Ever. The stores had boots that looked like they were made for tanks by someone who had never seen a human foot. But you knew a guy, and that guy knew a woman who worked in the warehouse of the department store. And you were a doctor, or maybe you had access to good car parts, so you give the warehouse woman a special appointment for her daughter, and she gives you the boots under the table, wrapped in an old newspaper so nobody sees. This was our whole life. Everything was a trade. Everything was personal. This is why even now Russians don't trust institutions. If I go to a government office, I don't expect the law to help me. The law is just a piece of paper for the elites. I expect the person behind the desk to be an obstacle. I look for a way around, a workaround. When I moved abroad a couple years ago, I was shocked. People actually follow the signs. They wait in line and don't try to cut. They trust that the system will work. It felt like a trap to me. For the first 6 months, I was always looking for the secret way to do things, because my brain is wired to believe that the official way is always a dead end designed to frustrate you. This creates a society where you only trust your inner circle, your svai, your own people, family, maybe 2 or 3 friends you've known since you were 5. Everyone else is чужой, a stranger, a potential threat, or a tool. It sounds cold, I know, but when the state tries to own everything, your house, your job, your thoughts, the only thing you have left is your private relationships. We didn't have communities, we had something more like tribes, and if you weren't in my tribe, you didn't exist to me. This is why Russians can seem so rude to strangers. We don't do the service smile. Why should I smile at you? I don't know you. You haven't done anything for me. In Russia, a smile for no reason is a sign that you're either a fool or you're trying to scam someone. It's a defense mechanism. We save our warmth for the kitchen, behind a locked door, with a bottle of something strong. I grew up in the chaos after the Soviet collapse, the 90s. This is the part Westerners remember as a victory. The wall fell, you're free. Let me tell you about that freedom. It felt like being thrown out of a plane at 10,000 feet and then someone shouts, "You're free to fly." But nobody gave us a parachute, and we didn't know how to fly. We only knew how to fall. Suddenly the grey wall was gone, but so was the bread, so was the safety. My parents, they were lost. My father, the engineer who survived by being invisible, suddenly he had to be visible to survive. He had to sell industrial light bulbs on the street corner in the snow. He had to hustle. It broke a whole generation, because the Soviet system took away your agency, but it gave you a floor, a very low, dirty, concrete floor, but it was a floor. You wouldn't fall through it. Then, overnight, the floor turned into a hole. You saw people who had been professors now begging for spare change. You saw gangsters in silk suits driving Mercedes while the police stood by and watched because they hadn't been paid in 6 months. That was our freedom. It taught us a very dangerous lesson, that democracy is just another word for chaos, and capitalism is just another word for theft. Many people missed the cage, because in the cage they knew where the bars were. They knew if they didn't touch the bars they wouldn't get shocked. In the freedom of the 90s, the bars were still there. You just couldn't see them until you hit them at full speed. When I look at Russia today from the outside, I see people trying to build the cage again. They aren't doing it because they love the old ideology. Nobody wants to go back to Marx. They're doing it because they're tired of falling. They want the predictability back. They want to know that if they stay quiet, they will be okay. It's a psychological trap. When you train a dog to stay in a yard with an electric fence, and then you take the fence away, the dog still won't leave. The fence is in his head now. That's the true Soviet legacy. It's not the statues of Lenin or the red flags, it's the fence in the head. It's the deep, shivering belief that change is always for the worse, that different means dangerous, that the person who promises you freedom is just another liar with a better script. We became a nation of people waiting for the other shoe to drop. Even when things are good, we're nervous. Why is it so good? What is the catch? Who is paying for this? We can't just enjoy a sunny day. We have to wonder if it's the precursor to a drought. And here is the uncomfortable part for you. The part I noticed since I moved away and started watching Western culture more closely. I see the same things happening in your open societies. It's subtle, but it's there. I see people becoming afraid to say what they think because they might be noticed by the wrong crowd. Now you call it cancelled or flagged, but the feeling is the same. The feeling of checking over your shoulder before you make a joke. I see people starting to use the official face and the real face. You talk one way at work to satisfy the HR department and another way at home with your friends. Your words are becoming empty, like our party slogans. You use big words like justice and equity and freedom, but they feel like plastic. They feel like things you say so you don't get in trouble, not things you actually believe. You think you're different because you have many parties and 1,000 TV channels. But if the psychological result is the same, if you're afraid, if you're cynical, if you stop believing that your actions can change anything, then you're just living in a more colorful version of my childhood. The Soviet Union didn't fail because of tanks. It failed because it killed the connection between what a person does and what a person gets. It made effort irrational. When you make it so that the only way to succeed is to lie, to hide, or to know the right people, you're building a Soviet Union. You don't need the KGB for that. You just need to destroy the incentive to be honest. You just need to make people feel like they are replaceable parts in a machine that doesn't care about them. I remember my grandmother. She lived through the worst of it. Stalin, the war, the hunger. She used to save every piece of string, every glass jar, every crust of bread. Even when the cupboards were full, she saved. I asked her why once. She said, because the world can turn over in one night. You think you're standing on solid ground, but it's just a rock, and someone is always waiting to pull it. That is the Russian soul. We are the people who are always waiting for the rock to be pulled. And the funny part is, most people won't even notice the rock is moving until they are already on the floor. They will keep saying the official words and wearing the official smile until the very last second. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm not an activist. I'm just a guy who grew up in the ruins and managed to get out. I'm just telling you how it really is. I've seen this movie before. I know the ending. It starts with silence. It continues with lies everyone agrees to believe, and it ends with everyone wondering how things got so grey. Anyway, that's enough talking for now. I didn't mean to be so dark, but, well, I'm Russian. Stay safe, and maybe try to be a bit more visible while you still can. Thank you for watching.